Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Storytelling with Puck. It's our last day of the week for 2021, so let's kick it off with a story.
The hatred of Jimmy Quinn. I hated Jimmy Quinn. There could be no other way to feel about him. He was to be hated. He was ugly, stupid, and snivelling. He stank. He dressed like a hobo. He played no sports. He was always in your face. If you mentioned a movie, he mentioned the same one, right after you had, even when it was clear he'd not seen it. What a liar. He walked home with us after school. The mothers would meet us at the school gate. Jimmy would race to my mum, grab her hand, and natter at her. We'd go to his house first, 3 blocks away. He'd have eaten my afternoon treat. You can have more at home. And bragged about things he'd never done. His own mother would yell at him from the step to stop bothering people and get inside. My mother would give him a parting hug and tell me to be nice. I wasn't. I wanted to punch him in his thick, taped up glasses. Once I even did. I can still see the Quinn's cornyard, without fence, trees or grass, muddy, with an abandoned taxi stand at one end. I see Jimmy Quinn's frayed shirts and soiled shoes, his dirty, upturned face. I can hear the sheer joy in his voice talking to my mum. Somewhere, Jimmy Quinn hates the me that hated him. I do too. Very much.
So we should say thank you to Dean Oliver for submitting that wonderful story this week for Storytelling with Puck, and nicely read by Stefano. And also thank you to Gary for his sharing his guitar playing at the beginning video that we shared.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Really, really great.
Really enjoyed that.
And I would also like to thank Cyan, although she told me not to, for the video just before that, which was of us on our travels, actually. 100 days and 100 seconds. Is that how you did it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the last day of Storytelling with Puck, and what a week it's been. We asked you for your stories, and you definitely didn't disappoint us. So we were counting up earlier this evening, and we've had over 120 stories, and I think even since then a few more have come in. So thank you to everyone who's taken part. It's been incredible, and all of the stories have, some of them made me cry, some of them made me laugh, some of them made me a little bit angry, intrigued me, and I've learned a lot about a lot of people this week. So it's been pretty amazing.
It really has, and as Saya mentioned, it's not just the fact that there's been so many stories, but the unbelievable creativity that's gone behind them, and even possibly more importantly than the creativity, the soul that every single one of you has put into them has been what's made it so special for us. And hopefully for all of you too. I know we've had some lovely comments from a few of you already about how much you've enjoyed the week. You may have just been giving us platitudes, but I hope not. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as we have. We found it fantastic. Before we bring you all in to the world of tonight's storytelling, I think Sam would like to read one more to get us really started.
Yeah, so this one is from Nicola Richardson, who's also been a big supporter of Storytelling with Puck and gotten a lot of people involved from her network, so thank you for that. The chocolate brownie called out to me. Sat in the cafe, looking at the brownie, sitting on the pristine white plate on the other side of the table, I struggled to not let my hand wander over and snatch it quickly. After some consideration, I decided I would treat myself and savor the warm cake. Suddenly, there was a commotion, and I turned to look out of the window to see what all the noise was about. I turned back, and the brownie had disappeared. I felt desolate. My mouth had been watering in anticipation. Have you ever lost something you were really looking forward to? It took me back to missing things going on with my teams because I was being distracted by peripheral things. A timely reminder.
Hopefully you enjoyed that. Now, I would like to ask you all to unmute yourselves if you don't mind, because otherwise it's just going to be us talking at you and nobody wants that. And as we often do, it's great we can say that now. As we often do in these evenings, we would love to bring you in to maybe tell us your thoughts on those two stories and anything you like, really.
I'll kick off, shall I? Because
Please
it's got a
do.
bit quiet there. So I just think I love that. I know Dean from LinkedIn, so I follow his posts as they sort of pop up, and I think we all know a Jimmy Quinn, don't we? I just think back to my own childhood and think about the kids that got. I mean, I was a teacher for a long time, and the kids that got picked on at school by most of the year. Say, often you look back on those kids and you think, actually, some of those kids were just obviously really either from very poor backgrounds or they were clearly neglected, and you realize what those kids went through only as an adult later on. I think we've all sort of known Jimmy Quinns in our lives, haven't we, really? When you look back and think, and it pains you to think, actually, as a group, we were probably we just didn't understand this child's situation at all. But I don't. Maybe it's people jump in there, but I just think we all know Jimmy Quinn.
Anybody else know a Jimmy Quinn? Would you say? I think I'm with you there, Ben. I can instantly think of maybe 3 or 4 off the top of my head that would be categorized as the Jimmy Quinn of my school days. I'm guessing a few of you guys must have had a similar experience.
Not so sure as a woman whether I do know Jimmy Quinn, actually. So I didn't relate to the character, but actually I related to the end of it, where we are not happy with ourselves because of what we did when we were children. And I think that's kind of where I was with it. It was kind of, there was a young lady in our school, and it's funny, I've just recalled her actually this last couple of weeks, where she was bullied, and although I wasn't part of the group that bullied her, I stood back and watched rather than said something, and I've always regretted that. And yeah, it just reminded me of that.
It's powerful, and it's interesting that you say you don't fully relate to the character, but yet there's still something that you relate to, and there's still a feeling that you relate to with the story. And we talked about that a few times in these evening chats, of how we all get different things from the stories. We all get a slightly different understanding, and sometimes we think that everybody must be thinking exactly the same thing as us, but in fact we're not. We all have slightly different takes on it, and slightly different ways of understanding the story, and I think that's part of what makes them so brilliant.
Definitely.
One other thing we've been doing, again, I feel like there's a few different people here tonight who we've not seen on some of the previous chats. So I would like to say hello to everyone who's not been here before. And one other thing we've done on a few of these sessions is we've asked if any of you would like to tell one or two of your stories that you have given us, you kindly shared with us during the Storytelling with Puck week. As usual, I'm sure there'll be at least 30 seconds of silence here, but I'm going to open this up to the floor and let anybody pitch in who would like to join and share their story.
Can I just say hi to Viv, by the way, because I haven't seen Viv for a while. Nice to see you again.
Hi,
Hello, Viv.
We live not too far from each other, so we used to bump into each other on walks along the canal.
Yeah, nobody bumps into each other anymore, do
No,
they?
well, people try to avoid each other now, which is a shame. Nice to see you again, Viv.
Thanks for the shout out, Andrew, because actually if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have got involved in this, because I think I saw something pop through on LinkedIn via your post. So I can't describe how grateful I feel for that, because this has all triggered something enormous for me. I've wanted to write my whole life, and I've written in different ways, but I'm now starting to write the book that I wanted to write for my whole life. So yeah, I feel quite overwhelmed by the whole experience, really, but incredibly grateful that you've kicked it off. So thank you to everyone who's part of it, and especially thank you to you, Andrew, for I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
It's kind of you to say this is turning into a bit of a loving, but thank you for Sean and Stefano for actually creating this concept in the first place. It's been a joy to be part of it. It really has.
We're very happy to have done it, but you're right, it is turning into a bit of a loving, so we'll say one last thank you to all of you for taking part, and then we'll leave the thank yous until later.
We love you all.
Remember us when you win awards for your novels.
Yeah, exactly. Just that. This was the day it started. This was the week it started. Your stories actually have blown us away, Viv. So we're very happy that you've been encouraged to take part. The two of them, the underground and I can't remember
the bathroom.
Yes, were spectacular. I love the way that you drawed us into the scene. I don't want to talk about it too much just now, just in case at some point you do feel like sharing it with us on this evening. So I don't know if that's something that you'd be interested in doing at all. If the answer is no, by the way, that's completely fine.
I might do the first one if I do any, because it's shorter. It's only 1.5 minutes. So yeah, I'll try and get my big girl pants on and read it.
It's already out there, so
I know, but that's not the time. Pretend it's not, can't I?
You can.
Actually, I need to tell you as well, I was speaking to my daughter earlier today. She also writes, and I have a bit of an imposter syndrome around it because she's so fucking good. And I was saying to her, I might join this storytelling thing tonight. She said, oh, why is it only mine? I said, oh, well, it's quite late. It starts at 7:30. She went, Mum, children go to bed at 7:30. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I can relate though, Viv. I can relate. I think 7:30's quite late for me to be online.
I'm sort of ready to crawl inside myself and just sit in front of the fire by about 7:30.
Me too.
Well, it's a very relaxed atmosphere here. You can just chill out, have a drink, and there's no pressure to you don't have to. We don't have to all put on a glad rags and go under the disco lights. So I think we can relax.
I've got my pajamas on already.
Perfect. That's how it
I
should
was
be.
wondering if it was her pajamas. I did wonder.
Pajamas and big girl pants all rolled into one.
All rolled into one. I love it.
This is the first time I've been out on a Saturday night for months.
Oh, Gary, please don't say that.
Is it a very different kind of party, though, Gary?
No, it's all right. It's better than listening to myself.
Is that Guinness you're drinking, Gary?
No, it's Coke. Just
Oh
Coke.
my gosh. You could just say yes.
No,
Yeah.
that'll do.
I love Guinness.
Okay.
Julia, what's the name of that cat?
Yes, it's Sylvester.
Sylvester.
That's the cat.
Have you also got a canary?
No.
Okay, so we've put it out there. We've asked a few of you if you'd like to share your stories. I feel like a few of you might be thinking about it, but not ready to go just yet. So whilst we are waiting, maybe Sam can read another. And this one is from a lady. Are we reading this one?
Yes.
Yeah, this one is from a lady called Rosalind. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. And it's a beautiful story. So Sam, please start.
So talking of Guinness, let's go to the home of Guinness. Back in the early 80s, I hitchhiked around Ireland with my boyfriend. We were studying Irish literature at the time. He had a penny whistle, which would sit by whichever road in the middle of nowhere that we were stranded on and screech out a terrible tune. We had a backpack each and very little money. We managed to hitch lift to each stage of the journey. Often they were not going to where we had planned, but we went anyway, as there were no Airbnbs or mobiles then. My favourite lift came when we were deep in County Clare and getting concerned about dusk falling. A battered old fan came into view. I flagged him down. He was charming. I said where we were headed and asked if we could hitch a ride. The priceless reply came, Jesus, if you want to go there, then you don't want to be starting from here. This is how the thought of changing feels often. It would be okay if only I didn't have to start from here. But you have to. That is the only place you can start, even if it is so painful that you would rather just not think about it. In fact, the more painful your current location in life is, the more you need to stop it compromising your health, wealth, and welfare. So set a journey to the new continent of you today. So that was one of the stories that made me laugh out loud at the line, if you want to go there, then you don't want to be starting from here, because that is exactly what somebody from Clare would say.
Well, you know, Sean, I come from the golf industry, and apparently a very famous American golfer was traveling in Ireland once, and he was at a petrol station. He was a bit lost, and he said where he was trying to get to, and an Irishman said, well, I know where that is, but I don't think you can get there from here. So it reminds me of that. I think it must be one of those standard things, one of those little stock stories that you hear in Ireland, perhaps.
It's like when the Irish taxi drivers. Sorry, it's when the Irish taxi drivers. You ask them how far is it, and they say, "Oh, it's 12 miles," but for you, it's 8. I think they've got lots of those lines, haven't they, Andrew? I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got them ready and set up, ready to go, ready to go. Oh, fantastic. On that note, has anybody built the confidence to express themselves in the spoken word?
Right, I'm going to go for it.
Go on, Viv.
Amazing.
Just to like completely dampen the mood now that we've all had a laugh, I'll read my poem of misery.
This is the beauty of stories, Viv, so please do.
Okay.
I like it already.
The bathroom. Karen leans against the door, clutching the handle behind her back. The sweet taste of rum is still on her tongue, mingled with the bitter taste of tobacco from a fumbled drag on her boyfriend's cigarette. The boyfriend has no name in this house. He is common. He is a thug. The walls of the room are half tiled in white with a thin black border at the top. The room is small, like many suburban 60s semi-detached homes. There is a shower over the bath, a relatively new addition. A plastic curtain hangs inside the bath, a few tiny spots of mould forming at its edge. A small wicker weave box with a cork lid sits at the end of the bath, barely containing her family's dirty laundry. At the window hangs a Venetian blind, its sloping slats covered by a thin film of barely visible dust. The blind is closed. No neighbour shall see what goes on inside this house. On the windowsill are scattered a collection of toothbrushes and toothpaste. In the corner, a wash basin, over which is a small mirror, a cupboard front behind which sits her father's shaving equipment. Karen only yesterday used his razor to shave her legs and underarms, her father's face in the morning spotted with little tiny pieces of tissue and blood from the blunted blade. There is no evidence of feminine products anywhere in the room, Karen's brother having commanded that these disgusting things be removed and kept in her bedroom. Karen steadies herself, then turns to open the door. She looks straight into her father's blue eyes. They are heavy with tired disappointment. You are difficult, you know, Karen. Nice girls don't come home at this time of night. Karen starts to move across the landing, only a few steps away from her bedroom. To her right is her parents' bedroom. The door is firmly closed. She pictures her mother lying stiffly on the right-hand side of the bed, wearing the brushed cotton, pale yellow floral nightgown that was folded neatly on her pillow this morning. Karen knows every detail of the nightgown as she made it for her mother. The slightly puffed sleeves, the broadery anglais on the cuffs and button to the neck collar. Karen's brother strides towards her. There is a thick vein pulsing in his neck. Karen looks up at his face. His frustration seems to be a brief recompense for all the anger and claustrophobia she herself has felt as her life recently began to unravel. She smiles. This is too much for him to take, and his large hand makes contact. She clutches her throbbing face. Their eyes meet. He steps aside and Karen takes the last few steps to her room. She knows that tomorrow there will be a bruise that might bear witness to the truth. The 3-bedroom doors are all closed now. Nothing more is said. Nothing more will be said. The end.
Bravo. Very good bit.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's maybe the 4th time I've listened to that now, actually, because I listened to it a few times when you first put it on. I shared it on Storytelling with Puck, and it's so powerful, and I know it must mean so much to you as well to get it out there. And slightly off the topic of the story itself, but also I feel like the way that you read it also adds to the emotion of it and adds to the words that you're actually putting down. There's something special about that. So again, thank you for that.
Somebody tell me it's shit and then I can...
All right, it's shit.
Could you read the first couple of lines? Because I love the way you set up the story, because what she does is it's very defensive, isn't it? I love the body language of the first 2 lines. Can you just read them again so I've not misheard them? But it seems straight away the tension of she's trying to turn away from what's behind her, isn't she? I think it's very, very clever. The first few lines suggest that she's in this defensive situation. It's really brilliant writing. I love it.
Christ. Okay. That's my way. That's my stupid Preston way of saying thank you.
Nothing wrong with Preston.
Karen leans against the door, clutching the handle behind her back. The sweet taste of rum is still on her tongue, mingled with the bitter taste of tobacco from a fumbled drag on her boyfriend's cigarette.
I think it's really clever. I love that the body language suggests, doesn't it, straight
Yeah.
away that she's closed. It seems so sort of defensive. It sets up the tension like within the first sentence. I think it's brilliant.
I can remember that kind of feeling as well myself. So actually, the taste of the rum on your lips and that cigarette, that's really quite powerful and emotive. So really, really well written.
Yeah, I think the way that you describe the environment as well, like you can really imagine being there, and it puts you right in the room. And especially because when you shared it, it was you telling the story. I was like immediately there, and I was actually walking around the house with my pods in, and I just stopped where I was and just had to listen to it. I stopped what I was doing to really pay attention to every detail. I think it reminded me of. Somebody shared earlier in the week, look on the outside looking in.
Yes, that's Julia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because when we were just talking about that story as well, the way that you described the house and the mansion, we immediately made some assumptions about who lived there, and kind of the two stories reminded me of the way that you set the story up.
And I say as well, it's the kind of style that I like. It's sort of it's not deadpan exactly, but it's just kind of, it's like really descriptive, but also the writing almost doesn't, it's like it doesn't get in the way. I don't quite know how to describe it, but it's just you're there and you can see it, and you're not aware that you're actually listening to a story being told. You're just actually in it as if you're seeing it. God, that was articulate, wasn't it?
I actually think it was. I think the writing doesn't get in your way. It's quite poetic. I think
what if I can pick up on what Sean said, then they're very interesting. Where quite often, if I often listen to podcasts and I'm maybe doing something else, doing some washing up or housework or whatever, and it's on in the background. And sometimes when there's a really great story starts to be told, I listen to a podcast called The Daily quite often, which is I think from the New York Times, and it's brilliant, and they often have stories on there, and it just makes me stop what I'm doing and I have to listen. And I think that was a case in point there, which Sean picked up upon. And the other thing that Stefano said is that this idea of sorry, when I throw my arms around everywhere, I knock my headphones out. I get very animated. Like I'm like from a different era. Magnus Pike used to. None of you will be old enough to remember him, but
no, I am.
So Stefano, you talked about this is the fourth time you've probably heard that. And I have this debate a lot with people around movies, because some people will not watch a movie a second time because, oh, I've watched it now, I'll watch something else. But I actually revisit my favorite movies, on a regular basis, and I see things in them that I didn't see before. And I think sometimes it's really worthwhile revisiting something if there's something in there that perhaps you haven't discovered yet. Definitely. And also, because your life has moved on a little bit during that time, it might be more resonant with you because of something that's happened in the intervening time.
That's a great point about the idea of, especially if you're watching the movies quite far apart from each other. I think that's a really great point. And as we were talking about earlier, when we were having different perceptions of Dean's story originally, but they're also the perceptions we have now. They're also the ideas that we have now, and it's a similar to what you were just saying there. Is maybe if we all read or listened to Dean's story again in a year or in 2 years, we might see something completely different, even though he's talking about something historic in the school era. We might all get something different from it if something happened within the year that isn't necessarily to do with school, but you can relate to the fact that somebody was being bullied maybe, or you can relate to the fact that even if somebody wasn't being bullied, that they were going through a really, really hard time and they were stressed at home and nobody was there to help them. There's all of these different factors that elements of a story can bring you somewhere, even if the whole story isn't exactly what has happened to you. Exactly. You don't have to know every single part, every single detail to relate to it.
Exactly.
And I think Viv's story, I mean, I'm picking up on sort of Gary's point really and marrying it to Andrew's, it's very cinematic, isn't it? It's lots of details. and we're just encouraged to view. There's no, the narrator early on in the story is just dropping clues and isn't interpreting. As
That's
a
what I
reader, we have to play the detective, and that is, we're as unsettled as the main character, aren't we? And we're sort of we're trying to recognise that bathroom and the situation. We realise there's a threat there, but the pacing works really well, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, and it's very, like you said about the opening lines, where the writing is quite it's only describing those parts that are necessary to tell the story and to describe the character and the mood. There's a short story writer I used to really like, Raymond Carver, and he's very much like that. It's just nothing unnecessary, just everything stripped back down, and he would just rewrite and just like chuck out loads until he couldn't take out another word.
Isn't there a principle, Gary, called Chekhov's gun or Chekhov's rifle, whereby you have to extract anything out of the story that's unnecessary? And if you watch movies, you'll often see something introduced quite early on, but there's a reason for it, and it will come back later on to play a part in the script. I think it's called Chekhov's rifle as a principle.
Oh, is it? Yeah, they did that a lot in Breaking Bad as well. Lots of clues all the way through about stuff that's coming up. So yeah, and it's just the way that was written kind of reminded me of that sort of thing, where it's like quite stripped back and it's just only what you need to know. That's the.
On that note, and firstly, actually, Viv, thank you very much. Really appreciate you reading that aloud. But would anybody else like to share something with us? To share a piece? I know that quite a few of you in here have written some brilliant ones, so we're very open to listen.
Could I read part of one of mine?
Please
do. It was. It's about 3.5 pages, but rather than read it all, if I can just read the part that just takes up about 2/3 of the first page, and it was just and the reason for that is that this week has sort of broken something that needed breaking, like a dam. So I started writing off loads of depressing stuff about myself and got fed up with that, and then just thought I'll go back to seeing if I can do fiction, because it's never worked before. So I picked something really old and just chopped it up and rehashed it, and it's pretty rough, but I liked the way it felt when I did it, and so.
Brilliant. Yes, please. In that case, go ahead. We're
okay.
Anticipating.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Right. 6:15 and still dark. The kitchen lit only by the hob extractor and the neon glow of the coffee machine. Matthew, Matt, Durand leaned on the sink and gazed out at a couple of cars parked nose to tail beneath the streetlight and coated with a placental sheen. The rain had stopped and the road was spattered with soft orange light. He untied and reknotted the cord on his dressing gown, then poured coffee into a large mug and took a tentative, scalding sip before taking it through the hallway and into the living room. Here, in the armchair, is where Matt meditates, a practice he started back in March when his father died, though the two events are not connected. He had rented the flat in early June. Everyone wanted to run a credit check and see references. After several aborted attempts to get a viewing, Matt offered the next potential landlord 6 months rent up front. 2 hours later, he rattled the keys at the front door of his new home. Prior to taking the flat, Matt had occupied a tiny derelict caravan in the corner of a field, his residence since last November. This was soon after his first encounter with Leon, the Russian. This was after his first encounter with Leon. The Russian had put him in touch with someone he knew had just inherited the family farm. This guy said he didn't care who lived in the caravan, and so now Matt had somewhere to sleep again. If the night shelter hadn't been closed due to a sudden cut in funding, he'd have stayed there. Okay, that's it. That's all I'm doing.
I'm fortunate enough to know how the rest of the story goes as well for pages 2 and 3. Have any of you guys had a chance to read it?
I don't think I have come across that one, Gary.
Unfortunately, and I think we should all write to LinkedIn actually. For some reason, LinkedIn will not let me share any of Gary's stories to the event. No idea why. The only person I can't share any of the stories, so you may not be able to see them. So please either go to his profile to find them, or type in hashtag storytelling with Puck and have a look for Gary's stories, because they're all brilliant. But they're maybe not getting the readership they deserve because I can't share them in the group.
LinkedIn vibes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In some ways, though, it's nice that you guys haven't read the rest of it, because maybe it's good to get a take on what you thought of the beginning. If you don't mind us discussing your baby a little bit, Gary.
Go ahead. I mean, I can see even just reading it, I was like, bits were jarring, and I was like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. But I don't really care. It's just like.
But you must love the line placental sheen. That is, what a description. That is amazing.
That stood out for me, Ben.
That's gold. I love it. I mean, very powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. I just had a little sneak at your LinkedIn, Gary. And I love what's there. Business illustration, helping your audience see what you see. That's fantastic. Yes. And I think that's what you're bringing to us in this story right now. It's good.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, for me, it just leaves you wanting to read the rest, because you just kind of want to know what happens next. And I think, I completely pictured him straight away, which is quite powerful, because even, very often you don't get that, do you, in a novel? You have to keep going back and trying to work out who the hell this person is, and you can't get the visual of them. But I've got a visual now from just that tiny little bit.
Okay.
The dressing gown cord.
Yeah, I think Gary writes in a way that always leaves you wanting more. So that you were sharing a particular story this week in parts, and I mentioned this in the comments, that it felt like it was a traditional soap where I was waiting for the next episode the next day. And one day I think you didn't share the story, and I was like, where is it? I was refreshing the LinkedIn page going, why hasn't he posted it yet? What happened?
Well, that was when I bottled out, wasn't it?
Yeah. But then you shared it again.
You came back.
I got my fill.
Julia.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Stefano.
Yes.
I have a very short LinkedIn story for you that Gary's story triggered in my mind, if I may just very briefly share. It's only a very short one.
Of course, mate. Yes.
I have a good friend. Viv might know this guy. He's called Mark Williams, and he's known as Mr. LinkedIn.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine, and he's a LinkedIn trainer. He's really, really good. He lives near Chester in northwest England. And he told me that after he'd been developing his brand for a while and being known for sort of LinkedIn training, he actually went to an event organized by LinkedIn I think it was in London. And Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, was actually there. So he was obviously like the headline speaker. And when Mark was just sort of hanging up his coat in the as he was entering the event, Reid Hoffman happened to be hanging up his coat as well at the same time. And somebody recognized Mark, my friend Mark, and said, Mr. LinkedIn. And Reid Hoffman looked up and said, oh, yes. And the guy said, no, I mean, Mark. so Reid Hoffman was really annoyed, apparently, that he wasn't seen as Mr. LinkedIn, and my modest friend in Chester was.
That's brilliant. The power of branding, hey?
There you go.
The thing is as well, when you said Mr. LinkedIn, I don't know Mark particularly well, but know him through LinkedIn because I know him as Mr. LinkedIn. So as soon as you mentioned the name, it's like, oh yeah, keep going.
And Mark actually recommends that, when you have a profile on your website, or sorry, on LinkedIn, you should actually try and write a story in your about section. Mm-hmm. And he actually does have a little story in his about section, which is when somebody met him at a networking event once, And the guy asked him, what do you do? He says, well, I'm a LinkedIn trainer. And the guy, I think, was a banker or a lawyer or something. And he said, oh, right, okay, so what else do you do? as if LinkedIn training wasn't enough, you know. So it kind of indicated that he didn't think that was a serious profession or worth, you know, focusing 100% of your time on.
I think some people do very well out of it, so I'd say it's quite a serious profession for some.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's a great story, though.
So one thing that we've got quite a lot of questions about this week, because we've let's say been introduced to quite a number of new people. A lot of people have asked, what is Puck? What is Puck Creations? Like, what is this all about? So maybe Stefano, you could do a short explanation of what's Puck.
I'll give it a go. It's quite hard to get down to the full detail of it, because if I'm honest, it started over 400 years ago. Initially, what Puck was a savior. Puck is actually a goat. And 400 years ago, my mother's hometown of Calorglan everyone was living their life, having a great time. But Puck was on the top of a mountain, as you'd expect a goat to be, and saw lots of invaders coming from the bottom of the hill on the other side of the mountain. So he couldn't do anything else. He loved his townsfolk, and he ran down to Calorglan, warned all of them what was happening so that they could get ready, prepare the defenses, and save the town. Cut a long story short, it worked. Calorglan was safe. They didn't get invaded, and it's a beautiful town which now every year on the 10th, 11th, and 12th of August celebrates Puck Fair to say thank you to this wonderful goat that saved them. So, as a mother's boy and somebody who wanted to continually go back to Ireland and to Calorglan as a child, I would continue to visit there every year. I'd often have a chat with Puck just to see how life was going. And one day a few years ago, I was sitting looking a little bit forlorn, and Puck noticed that something wasn't quite right. So he came up to me and he said, "Come on, this is a party. We've got 3 days to celebrate me. I can't have you being sad. What's wrong with you?" And so I said, I'm just struggling. I like working, with some of these businesses that I'm working with in the corporate world. And I like working for other people and being creative and doing what I'm doing. But something's missing. I see too many businesses that they're just struggling. They have great ideas, they have great products, great services, but they don't know how to get them out there. They don't know how to show the world. And I don't know what to do about it. Puck gave me one look and he said, "Of course you know what to do about it. Just go and do it." So I took it upon myself to start up Puck Creations. Of course, I had to name it after Puck. He was the goat that gave me the support in the first place to do it. And what is Puck Creations? Puck Creations is a company that believes in great ideas and believes in great businesses, but thinks that they don't get the recognition that they deserve. Puck is a company that makes people think, feel, and take action in order to give those businesses the recognition they deserve. But we had to do something to make that actually work. We couldn't just have some kind of fancy idea and think about what we wanted to do with our lives and with that business. So we worked out that the way to make people think, feel, and take action is if you have a truly good brand, a brand that everyone believes in. We're not talking about logos. We're not talking about websites. We're talking about what goes deeper. We're talking about what defines a company, the why, the purpose of a company, how the company's run, who the audience is that they're talking to. We're talking about the brand personality, what makes them, are they slightly fun, are they authoritative? All of these are the inputs that define a brand. So we decided to set up day-long workshops where we could work with companies to make sure that people understood their brand and it was consistent across the whole company. And finally, we thought, well, once they have that brand, they need to be able to communicate it. So I got to go full circle back to my days of being creative and get to write again. And that's why I write website copy, blogs, newsletters, and anything else that needs to be written down for the company. So that, in a nutshell, is my answer to everybody who keeps asking us this week, what is Puck Creations? I should say, the reason I did that in story form is because that is exactly what we do for all of our clients, is we write stories. And that is why we decided that we wanted to have an event where people could all share their stories too. We weren't really going to talk that much about Puck Creations, to be honest, as a company. We haven't done any of the other regions, but because we get asked the question so much, we thought we'd let you all have a little bit of insight into who we are. I'm Stefano, and this is Cyan, by the way.
Yeah, we realise we often forget to introduce ourselves.
But after that, we won't do too much more around who we are. This isn't what it's about. It's about the stories. But I hope you enjoyed that story a little bit, and now you know a little bit more about us too, and what we do and who we are. Would anybody else now like to share another story with us?
I would like to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Where is your hometown?
Oh, good question. You can answer that.
Well, right now we live in Eindhoven in the Netherlands.
Okay.
But I'm originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland, and Stefano is from Luton
In the UK.
in the UK.
Okay. Okay, so your hometown is in the UK.
Yes.
Well, yes, yeah. Where I'm from is in the UK. Our hometown, where we live now, is in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But we're.
No, I'm asking about the hometown you were talking about.
Oh, sorry, that's my
Oh.
mother's hometown, and that's in
Yeah.
Ireland, which is another. Just to add, that's on the west coast of Ireland. Just to add to the confusion a little bit more, and if you want to just really, because you're probably wondering why am I called Stefano, that's because my dad is from Italy.
Yeah,
so,
actually, it's a funny thing when the first time I read about this event and I saw your name, and actually I had to do a double take because initially I thought it's Stephanie.
I get that a lot.
No, Stephanie is an English name.
Called Stephanie.
I was occasionally called Stephanie.
Yeah.
So when I saw your name Stefano, I was like, this sounds Italian, but I didn't want to guess it. That was why I was asking you that. Now that you mentioned about your hometown, I was thinking that maybe you will say Italy.
The other side to my family, and I still think of them all as my hometowns in some way. Is in the south of Italy in a place called Puglia. That's where my dad's from originally, but he didn't have a goat, and the town didn't have a goat, so it didn't work quite as well for the idea of the business, unfortunately. But I will bring it back to you now. As much as that was fun, I much prefer talking about everyone else than I do about me. I feel very red in the face. So I'll let you all let your souls out there, and I'll sit back and listen if that's okay.
Definitely. Sorry, that I'm going to completely ignore that and just ask you what.
Okay.
what did you want to get from this week?
Okay, that's a good question. In kind of everything we've got, so I can tick all the boxes in a way, which is connection. There's two sides to the ideas of storytelling. Yes, there's the business side, which I was just explaining then, and I think there's such a power, and I know that there's a few of you who are writers and write for businesses, or communicators in some way for businesses here. And there's a huge power in storytelling, and there's a huge power in being able to express yourself in a way that isn't facts and figures and connects with the emotions of your customer and brings them closer to you. But that connection is wider. It's wider than just business. It's something which I feel is often missing when we're just building relationships in general, is that we very much go to the surface level and we don't dig any deeper. But with stories, we're able to dig a bit deeper. And from a personal point of view, and I think you felt this too, we wanted to see that happen a bit more. And so we started this initially 3 years ago. And that was the aim, was just to connect as many people as possible, and to get also with the LinkedIn feed, to get as many people as possible to get to know each other on a deeper level. And then there's the obvious business side of it, that our brand is going out there and people can see who we are, and that's always a benefit too. So it's always nice that people know who Puck Creations are. But there's also a business benefit to all of you who are writing your stories, because people then get to know you a little bit better and see who you are and see who your company is. And Kayla, for example, looking up Gary on LinkedIn earlier and wondering a little bit more about him because of the stories he tells. So there's a huge connection for everyone from both a human and a business side, and that's what we wanted. We wanted it to be as deep as possible, so we could all get to know each other. And I think and hope that that's worked, especially this year. I think it's been, well, it's been the biggest yet, but I think it's possibly also been the best yet. I think we've had incredible stories.
Stefano, can I just pick up on this idea of depth, because I think this is really important, the point you make here. I think about this a lot. And as you know, I work primarily in the business world, but very much aligned with what you were saying about helping people to humanize things and, you know, not be sort of cold and transactional all the time. And I sort of think very much in 3 layers of depth, and all the 3 layers begin with the 2 letters IN. So the top layer is information, when people just give information, or they might make claims that sound, you know, impressive, but they're quite empty. You know, they might say, we're very client focused. And you say, well, you wouldn't say you weren't, would you? You know, we're in it for the money. We don't really care about the clients. We're in for a quick buck and then find out someone else we can fleece for some money. So you wouldn't say, you know, so information is very surfacey. And then the next layer down, another in word, is insight, when you're actually providing some real insight. So people, you may be talking about something that everybody can recognize and be familiar with, but then you're telling them something that they didn't think about before, or frame it in a way that's fresh, you know, a different angle or perspective on something they kind of thought they knew about. And that's insightful. And then, of course, the third layer, which all these wonderful storytellers have been doing, is inspiration, which comes very much from those stories. And most of my clients are very stuck in the top layer. And Viv, I know you work a lot in the business world as well. We come across lots of people who introduce themselves and they're very surfacey. You know, if I hear another HR consultancy talks about being a full service, this and that, you know, I'll pull my hair out. So it's the bottom 2 layers beneath just the surface information, which I think are really interesting, but they often don't think deeper than that level. That's the thing. They haven't reflected and thought beyond that. But I think if you can get into those other 2 layers, you set yourself apart so well from other people who are stuck in that very top layer, factual information based stuff.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
true.
But I think people also get a bit scared of doing that, because sometimes people come to us because what we put out there is a little bit different. So like Stefano has Puck Poetry, so he regularly writes poetry, and people come to us because they're like, oh, that's interesting that someone in marketing is putting poetry out there, and you know, really doing something different. But then sometimes when you present to them, okay, this is what we suggest you do, they go, oh no, I want to do what my competitor over there is doing. And then you have to remind them of, well, no, when we had our day workshop with your whole team together there, this is what we said your company meant, and this is what you stand for. Now you need to show it to the world. And taking that first step, like I guess a lot of you have done this week with like kind of some of the stories that you've shared, like taking that first step of doing something different and really showing who you are. It takes some guts, but once you do it, you can really see the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Can I just say as well, do you think because of this past year that perhaps people, because that information level is so safe and familiar, and everything that's safe and familiar has been smashed to bits, that do you think that that's actually made people who perhaps otherwise wouldn't have been more open to the deeper layers, perhaps the insight, perhaps it's been, there might be people who were kind of like that anyway, but it's emphasized it, or maybe people who weren't, where it's been really difficult, but they've been kind of forced into that place where it's actually now they can operate at a deeper
I think, Gary, I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of this has released you know, some of that inner humanity, which a lot of these professional people were desperate to get out there, but were afraid to because maybe they work in risk-averse industries like insurance or banking or law or whatever. And you know, some things that I'm reminded of when we all communicate in this way, we're often seeing into our homes. And children come on the screen occasionally, or dogs and cats and so forth. So that's an element of humanity coming into our transactions, our interactions that we have online. But I think also, but in a funny sort of way as well. I've got you on. Which view am I on now? Is it gallery view? On gallery view, everyone's in the same size box. And in the business world, some people have bigger offices than other people when they're higher up the hierarchy.
That up, all right.
So it's a bit of an equalizer in a way.
It's a leveler as well.
It's a leveler, yeah. You've got the same amount of space on the screen.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And you think before, if someone was having a Zoom meeting who was used to being in an office setting, the Zoom meeting might have been a cause of like total panic and hours of preparation and making sure that everything looked right and everything. And I just wonder if people are starting to care less about that kind of thing. And I know obviously it's very generalizing, but and I do remember when the pandemic first started and the lockdown first started, and I would be on LinkedIn every day, and you could really see a difference in the way that people were responding to it. There were some who were just like out and out panic about it and tell everyone. There were some who were acting like nothing had happened, and they were posting the kind of things they always did, as almost like, well, I've got my content planner here. There's a global pandemic, but I've still got my content planner. And this is what I post about on Wednesdays, you know, and it just jarred, and it just seemed weird. Like, this is a weird kind of denial. And then it was just interesting to watch the way it evolved and how people were responding to it and how much they would let on to other people online of what it meant to them. And over time, you could see that sort of settle, and there weren't any of the posts that weren't acknowledging it. You know, they sort of fizzled out, and it was just, to me, it was fascinating to watch. And I just thought, is this indicative of something that's happening? Because obviously LinkedIn isn't the whole world. But does it?
For some, for most
does that indicate what's happening at a societal level? That people
a reflection of it. It is. Because we are not, I'm not just Kayla on the call. I said to everyone, I've moved around this room maybe 10 or 15 times. This is one wallpaper here. On that side, it's all blank. I have an orchid that's been dying for the last 6 months.
Hanging
my
in there,
lipstick here, my hand cream. Can't do without these things. Yeah, and this was one of my Toastmasters trophy from years ago. So our lives, it's true, we are all sharing the same space, and it's in a different way, and through this we have to evolve in a different way, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because if you get so caught up with everything, then you just don't show up. You know,
it's probably been the single biggest thing that we've all experienced in common.
True. In common, yeah.
That sort of globally brought us together in a way against a common foe, and going through common experiences and frustrations and anxieties.
Yeah, and it's working it out, because a studio lamp is shining on me right now. I turn it off, and this is me. See, but I had to learn and change, and I'm thinking, is this the right way? Do I need another one? Do I need a ring light? And sometimes you have to just stop yourself. Just stop yourself for a little bit and come back and refocus. So when Sean read that bit about the brownie, I felt a little tinge of mother's guilt, because my daughter asked me to pick up a box of brownies today.
I'm guessing the guilt is because you didn't, right?
It's true. It's because I went back to that West Indian shop, Stefano, that I was telling you about, because I heard it's gonna snow tomorrow, so I went to get cornmeal porridge, plantains, and all
Aw.
these things that reminds me of the comfort of home.
And I want to
And I
try
did-
your plantain. Is it your mother's plantain recipe with the mascarpone cheese? I really want to try that.
Yes, that's the British version of it.
Right.
It is the British version. But I tell you what I have here. I just saw a little story of Granny's house. I could just read just 1 minute of it if you'd like.
Please do. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just read about a minute. Do you remember the long days of your summer holiday with nothing to do but play? We were sent to Granny's house to spend our summer holiday, and we rebelled at how Granny lived in the country without a telly. We told our mother, we don't want to go. There was only one bus that could take us to Granny's house, a bus called Progress. The bus was strapped with sugarcane, breadfruits, yams, bags and baskets that belongs to the hagglers. Because Jamaica had a hilly interior, the bus drives through the valley to get to Granny's house. And for us, it was a 5-hour trek through mountain roads, twist and turning, while the engine choked sluggishly in 4th gear. Granny's house had 4 bedrooms. There was a kitchen and a bathroom inside, but if the weather was fine, we were expected to use the facilities outside. Granny's house didn't have a house number. It was a small district. They didn't have a post office either. It was a PA called a postal agency. I asked Mama, how can we tell when we get to Granny's house? She said, press the bell on the bus as soon as you see the breadfruit tree. Can you imagine 3 little girls looking for a breadfruit tree in the night? We arrived at Granny's house and she hugged and kissed us. She was very happy to see us, but in no time, Granny got down to business. Now, Granny had 3 rules. Empty the chamber pots first thing in the morning, eat what you're given, and do not touch her vanity set. Granny's kitchen was pitch black with smoke. You cannot see properly in the kitchen, and your eyes would water from the sting of the smoke that came from the wood fire. While I would squint to find the seasonings, Granny knew where everything was. There was a small window to the right of the kitchen, and she had no electricity there. There was a piece of chicken wire that hangs precariously over the wood fire. And you know what? Granny called the chicken wire her kreng kreng. That's what Granny used to smoke meats. It was no surprise to see a pig's tail pressed against it whenever you looked up. Granny had a large pot with 3 legs that was always bubbling away violently like a witch's cauldron. And each bubble would bring up the odd green banana or dumpling. The pot was made from cast iron, and after you have had dinner from it, your iron intake would never deplete. On Sundays, Granny puts on her Sunday best for church. As one of her rules was not to go into her bedroom, I would peep through the crack of her bedroom door. When Granny takes that bright pink powdered puff and doused herself with powder, you can't see anything in the room. And in that moment, I picture Granny coming on stars in their eyes saying, tonight, Matthew, I'm gonna be Mahalia Jackson or Aretha Franklin. Oh, and have I told you about the mangoes at Granny's house? There was the Blackie mango or the fine skin, the East Indian, the Julie, the number 11, Bombay, and a nice mango called Sweetie Come Brush Me. And these mangoes were at Granny's house. We would eat, we relax, we overindulge in fruits, with fruits such as star apple, pineapple, watermelon, and nesberry. This takes me home. So I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. But that's me sitting down and remembering what it was like being in the country with my grandmother.
Oh, it's lovely.
Bravo, well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
You should read audiobooks, Kayla.
Oh, I asked someone about it and they said it's very difficult. It can be a boring task and you have to go over and over and over. So I'm not sure about that path as yet.
Just do your own.
Yeah, maybe. But when I sit to write, when I get to that place, I get back to my roots. And when I share stories here in the UK, it's bridging the gap.
Mhm.
So I do use British colloquialisms in my talks. I do, and I feel like they have been received well. But that's a skill you develop, isn't it, Stefano and Sean? You develop that skill.
It is. But I think it comes across, and I think also something I noticed with both the way you tell the story and also the way the story is written is the flow, the energy that comes into it. Every line is has rhythm. Every single line that you finished, I was waiting for the next one to start because there was a bounce, and I almost felt like I was dancing along to the story in my head in some ways, and grabbing the energy from it. Every single bit of energy that you felt as you were going to your granny's house in the first place, and then as you were looking around and seeing stars in her eyes. I felt that energy, and I was picturing it happening as well. So it just brilliant.
Thank you.
I have a bounce in my.
It took me a while to get that, to loosen my thoughts, because if anyone is here who speaks a second language, you energetically you choose what to write in, don't you?
Yeah.
You choose what to write in, and I feel like I write from Creole and translate it back to English. And yes, I have to be down there. That's where the creativity comes. I'm back on that bus. I can see the breadfruit tree. But if I write from what Andrew called the top layer, then you wouldn't get that.
No, it's true.
I think it's so interesting though to hear you read out your own story, because I suppose ideally you would have somebody read out their own story because it's close to them. They've experienced it. It's coming from deep within them. Yeah. But obviously some people aren't always confident to read out their own story. And it reminds me of where script writers and screenwriters have to hand over their beloved work to a film director and maybe see it butchered. It's just, oh, what have you done with my script? You know, they've got to condense it maybe to 2 hours. Yeah. But then, of course, they see the lines that they've written acted out by amazing actors, and all they ever do is verbalize what's on the script.
Yes.
So in that sense, I guess they really do justice to the lines that have been written because they're able to articulate it in a way that non-actors can't. But it's really interesting that you've got, you know, Toastmasters behind you, and it comes through in the way that you articulate yourself and voice your own story.
Yes,
it was beautifully read.
Thank you. I enjoyed my days there so much. I really, that was one of the strong points behind me teaching others to control their nerves and understand the pressure when you go to competitions and you see a big room. And I always go for the impromptu ones because I used to think, gosh, I just don't want to carry around a script in my head. If I go for the table topics, then I hope luck is on my side and I can pull that out in no time.
But actors will talk a lot about intention. You know, they have to, it's not just a case of saying the lines. They've got to sort of feel what it's like to be the character in that particular situation.
That's
and
true.
Then it comes through in their voice and their body language. So they have to, it's all about the intention behind what you want to say, not just the words.
That's so true. And that's why I always say we are more than just who we are. There's so much more to us, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get people who've been on a listening skills course. They say, well, I've been on a listening skills course, Andrew, and they told me I needed to lean forward occasionally. I've got to go, oh, really? That's interesting. And I raise an eyebrow at least twice. Does that mean I'm a good listener? And I said, well, no, it's not really about that. You know, you've got to be genuinely interested.
Yeah.
Repeat after me. What did I just say, and what did it mean? Then I'll tell you if you're a good listener. That's.
Yeah, but I leant forward and I said, at least 3 times, Stefano.
Oh, in that case, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.
I really like what Stefano said about it as well. That at the beginning you said you weren't going to read much, but you read as much. You had to read that much to really show the flow going through it and that energy going through it. And they just as you were going along, like more and more, I felt like just sort of like colors were jumping out, and tastes, and it sort of, it has to pick up a rhythm and keep that going for a while, doesn't it? Which was again down to the way you read it.
Thank you.
On a point that Andrew made a few minutes ago, actually, firstly, I'd like to see if anybody else would like to read their stories, but also if there's anyone here who has a story that they would love to be shared, but they don't want to read it themselves and would maybe like either Cyan or I to read it, or somebody else if anybody can get access to it, then we would also be happy to do that if we can get the story. If you're kind of a little bit nervous about speaking aloud and sharing the story aloud, but still want it to get out there, then let us know.
I'm happy to share mine, Stefano. If that's,
yes, please. I love your story. I've actually got it up in front of me.
Have you? Oh gosh,
it was on our list.
Yeah.
That's pressure, isn't it?
Okay, it's a horrible story. Does that make it better? I don't think so.
Oh, treat me gently. It's the first time I've actually spoken it aloud. So I've written it, but I haven't actually spoken it aloud. So it's called The Journey. There was once a small child, happy in her own company, who loved music, art, and nature. She was full of fun and mischief, and had daily adventures in her back garden, which backed onto the woods. Whenever she felt afraid, she would sing to herself in the dark. The words of the songs brought comfort to her, and she would sing herself to sleep. As she grew, she started to hear a drum beat far in the distance, which she couldn't resist. So one day, against her parents' wishes, she went to explore. She came across a wise woman who took away her music. "You will not need this along this path," she said. And so the girl closed her heart to song. But she still heard the drum, calling, calling. Then she came across a wise man who seemed to be really angry with her. He told her to put down her sketchbook. "You will not have the space to carry this on your path ahead," he said. And he gave her a heavy rock to carry in its stead. "You will need more of these to keep you steady as you travel," he said. She was deeply afraid. But the drum still called to her as she dragged her feet forward across the dales and hills, calling, calling, calling. For years she travelled, adding rocks to her backpack, through storms, hail, wind and snow, sometimes resting for a while in a warm, sunny place, but always moving on, pushing through and never giving up. Until one day, she came across a tall oak tree. Its branches filled the sky and its roots sank just as deep into the earth. The dryad of the tree welcomed the weary, battered girl into its deep, cozy, warm trunk and said, "Sit down and rest a while." The girl sat down and they talked. They talked about her love of music, her joy of creating, and the stories of her journey. They laughed and they sobbed as the years unravelled, and the girl placed her rocks gently on the hearth, one by one. Once all that was said that needed to be said, the girl shut her weary-stained eyes and listened. In the darkness, she found that she was no longer afraid. She could hear the drum beat, louder and louder, her heart beating in time to its steady rhythm. She watched, amazed, as her heart unfurled, and there she was, the woman with the drum.
Bravo, well done. Beautifully read.
I always get emotional. I'm an emotional health coach. I help people with their emotions all the time, and yet I'm the most emotional one in the room usually. So,
That was beautiful, Sarah Jane.
Thank you.
Really lovely.
Cool.
Reading along with you, and I'm so glad that you decided to read it, because the extra elements you added to it with the drum beat as well, and there's areas which I think this plays back to what Andrew was talking about a second ago, which if somebody else had read it would never have read it the way that you did.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was powerful. Yeah, really powerful. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to do more with drums and stuff like that around fire pits and things like that. So I'm practicing at the moment to get out there and do that kind of stuff. So yes,
Good.
but I've got to get rid of the tears.
Or not.
I was going to say
There's also nothing wrong with showing how you feel.
No, there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
Yeah. That's lovely.
I'm going to have to go, folks. But again, just a joy to be with you. And I must thank the two of you for putting it all on. It's wonderful what you've done.
Fantastic.
And I shall miss this if this is the last evening.
Sadly, it is. Although, actually, whilst we've got everyone here, this isn't confirmed yet, so please don't hold us to it. But we're thinking of doing, to try and keep the energy of storytelling with Puck up until the next one. We're thinking of doing a podcast, and I was wondering who would be A, interested in listening to a podcast, Storytelling with Puck, and B, you don't have to answer this bit now, but every single one of you has told great stories, and so we'd also like you to all be guests at some point as we do the podcast series. But the first answer you can answer now, would people be interested in a Storytelling with Puck podcast?
Sure, yeah.
People would be. I think
Definitely.
yes.
Okay, that's pretty unanimous. I'm happy with that.
We have an audience.
Yeah, in that case, it will be done. We've said it now. We've got accountability. So.
Yeah. But I think we should all put our hands together for the two of you who put this on. So well done.
Well done, Steph.
Thank you.
So I'll bid you all good night, folks. It's lovely to see you again.
Bye, Andrew.
Thank you so
Well
much.
done, all of you. Amazing stories. Thank you for sharing them. And I think, Stefano, you and I are going to pick up this coming week.
We
Which
are
will be
indeed.
nice.
Yes.
And Sean, thank you so much again for all your help. So have a good evening, everybody.
Okay. Bye,
too.
Thank
Andrew.
you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome, Shona, by the way. I don't know if, because I can't see you, I don't know if we can hear you. Maybe not.
Sorry, Stefana, can I also absent myself now? It's been really lovely to meet you all. I feel a little bit overwhelmed actually. So in a good way, not in a bad way.
Okay, that's good. I was wondering, I was like, uh-oh.
Thank you for your story.
Lovely to meet you, Viv.
I look forward to the novel.
Bye.
Great
Yeah.
to meet you.
Thank
Keep
you.
writing.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye, take care.
Bye.
I don't think we've had a chance to say hello to you or speak to you very much throughout the evening. So hello. Oh no, maybe not. Can you hear him?
No.
So was that to me?
No,
No,
to
to Ria.
Ria.
Rhea.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Hi.
I miss
Oh
her.
yes,
Are you
yes, we
still
can.
speaking to me?
Yes,
We
sorry,
can
I just
hear her
wanted to say
now.
hello. We haven't
so
really had a chance to say
sorry.
hello.
I'm so sorry. I thought you're speaking to Shona.
No,
Okay,
we
no.
tried Shona and that didn't work out. So
Yeah. No, I wasn't going to share my story, although I obviously posted it. Something I just observed when I was doing my story, and it obviously happened now when, let me just get the name quickly, Sarah Jane, when she started crying and got emotional with her story. While I was writing mine, although I did it in third person, there's certain bits, and it got me thinking that writers for me are actually brave, very brave, because you get through certain emotions in your story. When you start the story, you don't think you're going to go there. But as you get to certain bits of that story, and it's word by word, it brings back those memories. And obviously now when I saw Sarah crying, I'm like, okay, that is exactly what happened to me. I'm not going to share my story, but I just wanted to say that I do believe writers are very brave. To go right through with those words and make that story come to life is amazing.
Oh, thank you, Rhea. It's good to know I'm not alone as a crier.
Oh, well done. No, Sarah, you're not alone as a crier. No.
I will tell you this: when I wrote, I don't know if anybody saw the poem I put out this morning for Storytelling with Puck. When I wrote that, I had a tear in my eye.
And then I really cried when I read it. So Stephanie was under instructions not to read that one tonight.
Okay.
Oh, can't we just have a big cry in as well? You know, it's a really good release. It's really good to release your tears. They have a special chemical in them, tears, that actually don't get released any other way, and they're healing. So actually, if we don't cry, actually, it's a bad thing. So do cry.
I can't remember the last time I did.
My last post was about my mother. My mother, she died from cancer. So actually, it's been a long time. I never talked about it to anybody because another problem is that you hardly get anyone who has the time to listen to you and understand your feelings and emotions, you know. So I just felt like I don't know how I should put it, but I just felt like to pour out my heart, you know. And I don't know how many of you have read it. I actually had tears in my eyes. I described, the situation that I and my family went through, and the way my mother, she suffered, and yet she was very strong, you know. And I felt relieved at the end when I finished and I posted it. I felt relieved, that bringing out of your emotions and crying, it actually relieves you of it's like a burden in your chest. So when you bring it out,
Yeah,
so I have never
brilliant.
shared all that detail with anybody else. So
Thank you so
that's
much
beautiful.
for it. Sorry.
That's beautiful. I did read it this morning, and it really connected with me too. And thank you for sharing it, because actually it's all these stories that allow other people to share their stories, isn't it? And
yes.
and we're going to have an awful lot of stories through COVID, aren't we? There's going to be an awful lot of stories around what we've been through in the last few months, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens after this, isn't it? And I think it is a very cathartic thing, being able to write. I write in my journal in the mornings, I write in my journal in the evenings, and I write for myself mainly. That was the first time I've really written for anything else, so it feels a bit weird. But it's been good. It's been a really good experience, so thank you.
I'm so impressed with the number of people who don't typically write, who've chosen to write for the first time and then share it with people, because I think particularly maybe in previous years, a lot of the people who shared things, like it was sort of their job, like they were a writer or an illustrator, so it wasn't such a big leap for them maybe. But this year we've seen like a lot of people sharing things for the first time, which yeah, I think for me it's really incredible to see. Then you're hearing stories from people that we don't normally hear them from, because your point of view of your story is totally different to anybody else's.
Yeah, I think I've been encouraged to write blogs this year, and I've hated it. I've hated every minute of it. But I keep going back to it, thinking, "Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?" But yeah, I'm getting better. Put it that way. But yeah, it's not my forte, I don't think. But hey,
well, you're a very good
carry on.
writer. You've proven that with the story you wrote and shared here. I think sometimes this is actually, I think, comes full circle to what we've been talking about, and going back slightly to the business side of things, that when it comes to blogs and people recommend writing blogs, and obviously we recommend writing blogs, or getting us to do it, but even when you are writing your own blogs, often I think people give bad advice about blogs. They give the advice that you need to be very formulaic about it, and you need to copy this very strict set of rules that everybody has to write a blog.
The top 5 ways to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And there is a reason for that, because of Google, and because of SEO, and and because of the way it attracts the eye, etc. There are some benefits to that, but the reason that these type of headlines work to attract customers is often because they are quickly they're easy to catch on the eye for a majority of readers. But when you're writing something, you can still have a hook that doesn't copy everyone else. What's important is that underneath what you're writing, you are writing for your audience as a business, but underneath what you're writing needs to be you. You have created that audience in the first place. People are attracted to you because of who you are, not because of the fact that you guessed what they might be attracted to and then pretended to be it by copying your competitor. So the advice I would always give with writing the blogs is, yes, think about your audience, but remember the reason that you have that audience in the first place is because of the purpose of your business and the way that you wanted to resolve something, and the way that you felt you could do it differently by having your personality injected into it. So don't take that away when you write a blog, add it in, make it yours, and then your audience will read it and they will become one with your company and be more likely to buy from you in the future because they're attracted to you in that way. That's my little bit of business advice I would give.
That's helpful, thank you.
And you'll probably enjoy writing it more as well.
Sorry?
You'll probably enjoy writing it more because it probably feels a bit more like you rather than the version of you that people tell you should project to the world.
That's
exactly.
Brilliant. I've never heard it expressed like that before, that your audience is there because they were attracted to you in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. You do need to, all of the I guess the almost cliched things now that people say about the fact that you need to narrow down your audience. You need to make sure you understand who they are. You need to understand what drives them and their behaviors, etc. All of that is true, but people then often guess all of these things. But actually, if you look back within yourself first, you can work out who your audience are a lot quicker. Who might be attracted to this kind of thing a lot quicker, especially if the business has resulted from something that you wanted to challenge and you wanted to fix. Some businesses, it doesn't quite work like that, especially if you're thinking on a broader scale and there's a few different people involved at the top looking at different things that they need to solve, that maybe the audience is slightly different. But that's then when you talk about a group brand, and that's when you talk about working out what the purpose of the company is and how you can connect everybody within the company. They all have that same drive and they all have that same message. And once everyone's on board with that, then you start writing the blogs to make sure that your audience are also on board with that and can come and see what you're trying to aim at. So there's it's something really important that we often discuss is, everyone tells you to define your audience, and that's really important, but just be careful how you do it and be careful how you come up with it in the first place.
I started my blog in 2019, and I just felt like to start something different than what I have ever done before. And of course, initially when you start something new, people, they may not give you any attention. And then since my blog is on WordPress, I had to follow other bloggers And then within this 2 years now, even though I have not gotten, like, maybe you can say thousands of followers, but it's gradually increasing. And that has, when people read your writing or your article, your post, and they will like or they will comment. So whatever little thing somebody does, even just to like your article, it gives you a bit of satisfaction that yes, there is somebody who appreciates the effort that you put into searching for some topic, and doing all the research to write an article on that particular topic. And since I have started writing a book last year, I made my author website. Now, there's nothing much in it, because obviously when you are an author, the main purpose of your website is to, when you publish your book, you have to advertise it. So I have to wait till when I publish, maybe hopefully before the end of this year. But then I felt that I have to do something else, to keep it active. So I once I saw somebody's website, one, he's not really an author, he's just a blogger. But what the guy did was that he does author interview for free, not video, just like writing. So I think not many people do that, so I sort of had that idea. And then on the Facebook groups, the groups for writers, especially the group which is for promotion, author promotion, I just put the post that if anybody is interested in having an interview, then they should message me. So many people did. And then I had to search on the internet that, okay, what type of questions to ask? And then I would, if anybody messaged me that they are interested in the interview, I have to ask them that, okay, first of all, you tell me about yourself. What do you
so
like?
You've got a little bit more of an understanding.
Yeah, you have an idea, so that you have to, because you can't ask everybody exactly the same questions. It doesn't work like that.
No, it might not be the most entertaining for your for your listeners or for your readers either.
Yeah.
Always asking exactly the same thing.
And during my research, I found some website on which they have given like examples of questions that you can ask authors. And then on one website, it was written that there are many questions that are commonly asked to authors, which, something that is common, is becomes boring.
So you need to think of ideas that are different and varied.
So they gave different ideas. And then, like, as I said, that first of all, I will ask the author that, okay, you tell me about yourself. What genre do you write? Have you published any book, And then I will, according to whatever information the person gives me, I will go back to those websites where they have the list of questions.
Sorry to interrupt you for 2 seconds. Oh no, she's gone. I was just trying to catch Garima before she left. Sorry, Kayla before she left. Sorry to say goodbye. But sorry to interrupt you there, Garima. But yes, I just wanted to say thank you for coming, Kayla.
I think Garima, your story is really good. That you almost you put yourself out there to say, hey, can I help these authors?
Yeah.
And then you figured out how to interview them afterwards. How do I do an interview? So you just sort of jump straight in, which is really nice, because some people could spend a year figuring out how to interview without ever interviewing anybody.
It was like a leap of faith,
Yeah. Let's just start, which I see lots of people doing this week as well. Like, let's just write a story and put it out there, even though, Gary says, well, my story's not completely finished and I need to edit it. Well, it's already out there, and you can already see that even in what you think is not a perfect state, people already love it.
It's true.
So
actually, talking about that, Gary, I think we are all definitely our own worst critics. I know whenever I do anything and put it out there, the thing that scared me the most, I put stories out there so often these days that I'm almost used to it now, even the ones that are very close to my heart. So I still have a little bit of fear every time I put it out there that someone's gonna really hate it and decide that I'm an evil person and want to I don't know, come and do something horrible to me because of it. But most of the time that fear is only very small. But for me, the idea of putting out a song and playing the guitar and singing for the post I put out yesterday, I was petrified. I did not want to put that out there because it's not something really I ever put out there. but as Garima said, it's a leap of faith, and I just thought, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just give it a go. And Cyan kept on pushing me quite hard.
And one thing I noticed was that even when after I have made the list of questions and send it to the authors, some of them, they don't bother to respond. I don't know what is their reason, but whatever, maybe they forget, or maybe the list of questions that they see, I don't know, maybe they don't find it all that interesting. But I don't bother about it. If somebody is truly interested, he or she will definitely respond. So those people who have responded, I when I put them on my website, and then I started getting likes,
Yeah,
I started getting likes, and then those authors, I will even ask them, when I send them the link to the website, that okay, I have put your interview, this is the link, so that they can share it. So I will always ask them that I hope you like it. So they will be like, yes, thank you very much. So I think that, as when I publish my own book, okay, then I can write about my book. But for the time being, let me do something different that can build up the audience in one way or the other, so.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of starting, and you're learning a new skill, and you're writing, and the more you write, the better you get at it. And you're building your audience. And some of the authors that you mentioned that maybe it's not for them, well, that's also okay, because we don't need everybody to love everything we do. You just need a small amount of people to like what you do, and that's your audience, and you can build a career around that. You don't need billions of people to like your stuff, because you'd probably be quite boring and middle of the road and mainstream if everybody likes you. Some people won't like you, and that's okay, because it probably means that other people will love you.
Talking of that, and also talking of I guess jumping into learning on the go. That's maybe another. I think you've given us another good way to segue into some more stories. Is there anybody who's got some stories of like Garima's of how they kind of had to learn on the go and take that leap of faith and jump into something new? I'm sure that you guys must have a shared experience like Garima did in that way.
Well, I can tell you mine very briefly. From being where are we now? It was, well, 4 years ago I was homeless, and I was in a relationship that has sadly came to an end around about a year ago. It was kind of a bit, anyway, cut a long story short, I was homeless and in a shelter, and just decided that I thought I'd have a go at making a living as being an artist. And I didn't really know what kind of artist I was, and I knew nothing about business. A few years before, in another life, I used to flog expensive software. And I just started and just was like, everything online I could get my hands on, webinars and all those free PDFs that people hand out, and just all this stuff. I just knew nothing, and I started getting to know who people's names were, and I just drew every day. And just soaked up everything, went to networking meetings, and I'd walk around and think like, well, these are the normal people, and I'm just kind of a scumbag loser who's having some ridiculous last gasp attempt at something or other. And gradually things started piecing together, and just that, long story short, that's kind of how it all kind of started building up. And just, you know, when people talk about imposter syndrome and I can't do this and I can't do that, well, I just accept that I had a kind of tidal wave of that every day. Just like, okay, well, I'm just going to draw, and I've got this thing on tonight. I'll go to that and have a listen, and probably say something stupid. And people who've been in marketing for 30 years are going to look at me like, who's this tosser? And like, and I just kind of kept doing it, really. And just loads of people, just the right person at the right time. And yeah, that's it, really. And kind of look back. So that's an example, I suppose, of having to just jump in and learn from where you are.
It is, and that's such a brave story to tell. I've been homeless myself, and I know what it's like. And I was homeless at 18.
Really?
And living on the streets, yeah. So I totally get it, and
Yeah.
it's really brave thing to share. And it's so easy happens, doesn't it? It can everything can just disappear so quickly. And you really don't realise how lucky you are. Every day I bless the roof that I have over my head. Yeah. even 30 years later, I still every night thank God that I've got a bed to sleep in and a roof over my head. So
well, I'm grateful for it because I can write about it now. And like when I finish writing, I can close the laptop and just go and have a cup of tea and go to bed and think, well, those are just words.
I like that. Where you once you were living it, now you're almost outside of. It's almost like Yulia's story in some ways. You're outside looking in, at the or inside looking out maybe at the world that once was, and you can almost be a third person to your story in some ways, and that's. Yeah, but as SJ said, thank you so much for sharing that as well, and for putting that, like letting us know kind of how it all came about, because I wouldn't have had a clue before. I didn't know that was how you started your illustrations. I didn't know that was how you started navigating the business world. And I have to say, if you were faking it and were trying to keep up with the so-called marketing experts to let yourself out there, it didn't show because everything that I see of yours online. I often think with the content that you're putting out there and kind of showing your work, but also not making it too work related so that people are getting to know you a bit better. You're doing the kind of things that I constantly recommend to people, which is all about building a bit of a brand. And I think sometimes I quite like superhero shows, and I was watching the show the other day, and it's a very different type of superhero show called The Boys. And they were talking part of the show. One of them said, "Oh, I have to live up to the brand because somebody had branded them," and that's where I think brands often go wrong. Is that somebody brands you rather than you defining the brand that you already have as a business. And so that's what I really like about the way that you produce your content, is that for me it felt real. It felt like this was you. I didn't see anything that was fake in any way, shape or form, yet I still saw some of your personality and I still saw the skill that you had. So I think that was a perfect combination. So don't listen to the marketers, do it your way, because you're doing it very well.
I mean, nothing I've done is I can look back at things and say I've got the guts to be more open about it now, and it doesn't feel brave, it just feels natural. But all the way through, I was never being, it wasn't like I was putting on a front or being fake. It was like I was just doing my best to do what I thought you had to do as being businessy and mixing a bit of personal branding with it. And so, yeah, it never consciously like, this is where I've come from, but I'm going to hide it. It was just like, this is where I've come from. And someone told me a quote, and I can't remember who said where the quote comes from, but it was, share the scars, not the scabs. which means tell people where you're from and what's happened, but don't make yourself vulnerable. Don't do it too soon.
Yeah. I think that resonates with me because I deal with a lot of emotions in people, and I think emotional scarring is the way I sort of see it is it's like when you're physically hurt, if you touch something that you physically hurt, actually it bleeds and it comes up, doesn't it? Whereas if you've got an emotional scar, actually, if you keep going back to it and picking at it, when you can go back to it and you can see it objectively, and as you say, it just becomes words, then actually you know that you are on the path to healing and you can actually talk about it. And I think it is, and this is why it surprised me actually that I cried, because actually I think I've dealt with a lot of that, but obviously there's some stuff in there that I haven't. But that's okay, you know, that's just part of me, and it's part of the layers that come into our lives, isn't it? But yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's a really good way of putting it. I like that. I might take that on if that's okay.
Yeah, well, if you Google it, you'll find out who said it, because I can't remember.
I'll have a look.
And that was another example of just like where the right people would say the right things at the right time, and it's always, which I'm sure other people will have loads of experiences of, that it's just, and it could be at a time where you think like, I don't quite know what to do next, and it would just be like someone there, even just like that, just someone just showing something, someone just saying something. And you just like, and it just sort of like helps, and to be able to like look back at yourself and just like say, almost like it, like Stefano just said, like it is someone else, and you look at them and you're like, well, actually you're doing all right there, you know, as if you've gone back in time to see yourself, and you're like, you're doing all right, keep going. How
many lives do we live?
Yeah.
You know, when you think back about how many lives do you actually live, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. You know, I can probably compartmentalize myself into about 6 or 7 different lives where I've been completely different people, probably. But there is always that drumbeat that goes through, and it's following that drumbeat and just picking up and putting the dots together. So there's always something in those lives that actually you can pick up and pull together. Yeah. But I've got to go. I haven't been very well this week, so I'm going to go and
so you did tell me that before, and you still came, so thank you so much.
Yeah,
oh, you're welcome.
Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you all, and thank you, Stefano. It's been brilliant. I wish I was here more often.
It's just been a horrible week. Here this time, and I was going to say we'll definitely be doing this again. Don't worry about that.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I should be.
I've got to go as well because my dog's having an operation.
I was going to say, I think maybe we'll wrap up. Yeah, exactly. Can we maybe, if you do have another, how long do you think that will take? Minute. If you do have another minute, I'd like to read something which I think is just a light note, which is just a moment. And it's from Janet Williams. I don't know if any of you have seen her stories this week. They've been brilliant because they really just capture a moment in time, which is something that we talked about at the very beginning of all of this, is that a story is just a moment in time. And the way that she connects things, I think, is wonderful. So I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to say goodbye now, because as soon as I've read this, I'm going to press end on the call. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you everyone for Storytelling with Puck 2021, for sharing your stories, for being here on the calls, for commenting, for liking, and this is going out to everyone who's obviously not on the call now, for watching the replays, and from a selfish point of view, and I think Siam will probably agree with this, for making us feel absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate every single moment of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The chickens that I had spent months feeding in the backyard with corn became dishes on the table. The reunion dinner on the New Year's Eve is the most important meal during the Chinese New Year. For some years in Malaysia, we kept chickens for a purpose. Just before the New Year, older women in the neighborhood would get together to kill the chickens. I watched. Lots of scalding water, a twist of the necks. I was asked to help, so I got to hand pluck the feathers. My mum would always steam a corn-fed chicken. The golden-looking skin with a fat layer was appetizing, and the meat tasted so succulent and sweet. Another dish would normally be braised chicken in dark soya sauce. The aroma of ginger, garlic, sesame oil, and soya sauce wafted through the air. Many years later, I came to study and then live in suburban England. For a few years, we kept a few hens in the little back garden. These were spoiled, carefree hens, which even had names. These hens roamed free. Sometimes they flew over the fences to annoy the neighbours. They gave us fresh eggs every morning. I am not sure what killed them later. Probably weasels or foxes. It was a mystery. On that note, thank you all very much. Have a lovely evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take
Good
care,
night.
guys. Thank you
Bye.
so much. Cheers,
Bye.
Simon. Thank you, Stefano. Brilliant.
Cheers, bye.
Good night.